The first time Princess Alara of Astoria laid eyes on Dr. Julian Hayes, she knew her life would never be the same. The subtle iridescence of her lavender skin caught the laboratory's harsh fluorescent light as she watched him work, mesmerized by the elegant precision of his movements. She had come to Earth as part of a scientific exchange program, the first of its kind between their worlds, never expecting to find love among the stars. The quantum resonance patterns are fascinating, Julian murmured, his dark eyes reflecting the holographic display hovering between them. Your Astorian technology harmonizes energy in ways we've barely theorized. Alara smiled, the bioluminescent freckles across her cheekbones brightening slightly, a physiological response she couldn't hide. Yet your human adaptability and intuitive approach to science is something we've never mastered. You see possibilities where we see only established patterns. Their hands brushed as they both reached for the same crystalline data core. The electric tingle that passed between them wasn't entirely due to the static discharge of the equipment. 6 months later, they sat on the roof of the research facility, gazing at a sky that held worlds they had both called home. Julian's arm wrapped around Alara's shoulders, her head nestled against his chest where she could feel the steady rhythm of his single heart, so different from the dual beat of her own. My sisters will not understand, she whispered against the night. Especially Thessala, as first princess she guards our traditions fiercely. Julian kissed the top of her head, where her silver-white hair met the delicate ridges that crowned her forehead. But they haven't seen Earth as you have. They haven't experienced humanity beyond diplomatic meetings and formal exchanges. They haven't experienced you, Alara replied, reaching up to trace the contours of his face, committing every line to memory. The man who looks at the stars not as distant lights but as homes waiting to be connected. That night in the privacy of Julian's modest apartment, they explored the differences and similarities between their species with tender curiosity. His warm hands against her cooler skin, the way her bioluminescence responded to his touch, casting their entwined bodies in a soft ethereal glow. Their kisses deepened, breath mingling, as the boundaries between human and Astorian dissolved in the language of desire that transcended worlds. I want to join with you, Alara breathed against his lips, using the Astorian term for marriage, before the cosmos and all who inhabit it. Julian pulled back slightly, his expression serious. Are you certain, the diplomatic implications alone? She silenced him with another kiss. I am a royal daughter of Astoria, but I am also Alara, just Alara, and Alara chooses Julian. The news of their engagement reached Astoria faster than either had anticipated. The Council of Elders convened immediately, and within days, Alara received the formal communication. Her 4 royal sisters would travel to Earth to evaluate this unprecedented union. They wish to judge you, Alara explained as they stood in the secure communication chamber, the holographic message from Thessala still shimmering before them. Each of my sisters embodies a different aspect of Astorian leadership. Thessala represents tradition and governance. Myra oversees scientific advancement. Vila commands our defense forces, and Cassida is our ambassador to other worlds. Julian swallowed hard, so I need to impress all 4 of them. No, Alara said, taking his hands in hers, the bioluminescent patterns along her arms pulsing with emotion. You need only be yourself, the man I've chosen. But yes, their approval would prevent potential conflict between our worlds. Later that night, as they lay awake wrapped in each other's arms, Julian traced the intricate markings along Alara's spine. Tell me about them, your sisters, what should I expect? Alara shivered pleasantly under his touch. Thessala is the most formidable, logical, calculating, and protective of our family's legacy. Myra will appreciate your scientific mind, but she'll test your knowledge relentlessly. Vila will assess whether you can protect me, though she'll never admit that's what she's doing. And Cassida, she smiled against his chest. Cassida might be your ally. She's always been fascinated by other cultures. And when do these formidable judges arrive? Julian asked, trying to keep his voice light. Alara raised herself on one elbow, her luminous eyes serious in the darkness. 3 Earth days. Their royal vessel has already departed Astoria. The gravity of their situation settled around them like a cloak. In just days, 4 of the most powerful beings in the Astorian Empire would arrive to determine whether a human man deserved their sister's hand, and with it, the first true alliance between their species. Julian pulled Alara closer, breathing in her scent that reminded him of rain and distant starlight. Then we have 3 days to prepare for a royal visitation. And I have 3 days to figure out how to win over 4 alien princesses who probably already think I'm completely unworthy of their sister. Not completely unworthy, Alara teased, her hand sliding along his chest, just mostly. Their laughter mingled in the darkness, a small defiance against the cosmic odds stacked against them. The day the Astorian royal vessel broke through Earth's atmosphere, The skis over New Geneva glowed with prismatic light. Military jets scrambled to escort the crystalline ship, a structure that seemed to be made of living gemstone, to the designated landing zone at the International Space Coalition headquarters. Julian adjusted his tie for the fifth time, standing alongside Earth's highest-ranking officials. His palms were sweating. "Breathe," Alara whispered beside him, resplendent in a gown that shifted colors with her movements. "They may be royalty, but they're still my sisters." "That's what terrifies me," Julian replied, only half joking. The ship's descent was silent, defying Earth physics as it settled onto the landing pad without engines or visible propulsion. A seam appeared in its flawless surface, widening into a doorway from which light spilled forth. First emerged the royal guards, tall, imposing figures with armor that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Then came the sisters, each a vision of alien grace and power. Thessala, the eldest, strode forward first. Her hair was platinum white, pulled back in an elaborate crown of braids embedded with what appeared to be living stars. Her eyes, sharp and silver, scanned the assembled humans with undisguised assessment. "First Princess Thessala of House Luminar, heir to the astral throne," announced an ethereal voice that seemed to emanate from the ship itself. Myra followed, her movements precise and measured. Unlike Thessala's regal bearing, Myra carried herself with the focused intensity of a scientist. Data projections flickered around her fingers as she walked, as though she were cataloging everything she saw. Second Princess Myra of House Luminar, keeper of knowledge. Vila emerged next, her muscular frame accentuated by light armor that Julian suspected was far more functional than ceremonial. Her gaze was piercing, and the subtle ridges along her forehead, similar to Alara's but more pronounced, seemed to radiate a controlled energy. Third Princess Vila of House Luminar, Shield of Astoria. Finally came Cassida, whose appearance most closely resembled Alara's. Her expression held genuine curiosity as she took in the human delegation, and she offered the first smile they'd seen from the royal party. Fourth Princess Cassida of House Luminar, Voice of Harmony. The formal introductions complete, Alara stepped forward to greet her sisters. They embraced in the Astorian fashion, foreheads touching briefly, before turning to the human delegation. "And this," Alara said, returning to Julian's side and taking his hand, "is Dr. Julian Hayes, my chosen bondmate." Four pairs of iridescent eyes turned to Julian with varying expressions. Thessala's cool assessment, Myra's analytical curiosity, Vila's barely concealed suspicion, and Cassida's open interest. So, Thessala finally spoke, her voice melodic yet sharp. "You are the human who believes himself worthy of our sister." Before Julian could respond, Earth's Secretary General stepped forward with diplomatic pleasantries, saving him from having to formulate an adequate response to such a loaded statement. The following reception was a masterclass in thinly veiled tension. Human dignitaries mingled cautiously with the Astorian royal entourage, glasses of champagne and Astorian luminescent nectar raised in awkward toasts. Julian found himself cornered by Myra near a display of Earth artifacts. "Your understanding of quantum physics is quite elementary," she observed, scanning a theoretical paper Julian had published the previous year. The data projection hovering at her fingertips displayed his work with annotations in Astorian script. "Though your intuitive leap regarding particle entanglement shows promise." "Earth science has developed along different paths," Julian replied carefully. "We've only begun to understand the principles that Astoria has built civilizations upon." "Yet my sister believes you comprehend her." Myra's eyes narrowed slightly. "Alara is our foremost physicist. Her mind operates on levels few Astorians can follow, let alone humans." "I don't presume to fully understand Alara," Julian said truthfully. "I simply love her completely." Something in Myra's expression shifted. Before she could respond, they were interrupted by Vila, who moved with predatory grace despite the formal setting. "Sister, you monopolize our sister's chosen." Her tone made chosen sound like problem. She turned to Julian. "I would speak with you about security matters." Julian soon found himself subjected to interrogations disguised as conversation from each sister in turn. By evening's end, his head was spinning with the effort of navigating their questions and veiled challenges. Later, in their private quarters, Alara helped Julian remove his formal jacket, her cool fingers soothing against his skin. "You survived," she said, pride evident in her voice. "Barely," he sighed, pulling her close. "Thessala asked about my genetic lineage as though she were selecting a breeding specimen." Alara laughed softly, the sound like distant wind chimes. "On Astoria she would be. Royal marriages are typically arranged for optimal genetic compatibility. Her fingers traced patterns across his chest. What I'm doing, choosing for love, it's revolutionary. Julian captured her wandering hand, bringing it to his lips. I'm honored to be your revolution. Their kiss deepened, and Julian felt the familiar wonder of her alien touch, the slight electric current that seemed to pass between them, the way her skin cooled his feverish human heat. They moved to the bed, where layers of formal attire gave way to intimate exploration. My sisters will test you, Alara whispered against his neck as his hands traced the luminescent patterns along her spine, each in her own way. I gathered that much, Julian replied, his breath catching as her cool lips found a sensitive spot below his ear. But they don't know, she continued, rising above him, her silver-white hair cascading around them like a curtain of starlight, that I've already found what historians spend lifetimes searching for, a soul that resonates with mine across the void. Their bodies joined in the perfect harmony that had surprised them both from their first night together, different biologies finding unexpected compatibility in the language of desire. As they moved together, the bioluminescent patterns across Alara's skin brightened, casting their union in ethereal light. Outside their window, Earth's moon rose over a planet hosting two civilizations on the brink of true connection, or potential conflict, all hinging on whether one human man could prove worthy of an alien princess in the eyes of her royal sisters. This is preposterous, Julian said, staring at the sleek, formidable exoskeleton presented to him in the training facility. I'm a physicist, not a warrior. Vila's expression remained impassive, the ridges on her forehead pulsing slightly with suppressed energy. On Astoria, every royal consort must demonstrate their ability to protect their mate. It is tradition. It's a trap, Julian muttered, though he began to strip down to the undersuit Vila's attendants had provided. The form-fitting material adhered to his skin like a second layer. Perhaps, Vila acknowledged with the faintest hint of a smile, but it is a trap you must navigate nonetheless. The exoskeleton closed around him with surprising comfort, enhancing his movements rather than restricting them. Within seconds, Julian found himself facing Vila across a circular arena, the princess now similarly armored. In combat, Vila explained, an Astorian royal must rely on their mate as an extension of themselves. We will now test your capacity for such harmony. Without further warning, she attacked. Julian's scientific mind registered the grace of her movements even as he desperately tried to evade them. Each strike came with increasing speed, and he found himself retreating across the arena. You cannot merely defend, Vila called out, landing a blow that sent Julian staggering. A consort must also protect. Something in her tone triggered a realization. This wasn't about winning, it was about proving he would stand between danger and Alara. With that understanding, Julian changed tactics. Rather than evading, he began intercepting Vila's strikes, positioning himself as though Alara stood behind him. The shift did not go unnoticed. Vila's attacks intensified, but now Julian held his ground, absorbing impacts that the exoskeleton dispersed across his body. Better, Vila acknowledged, launching a final flurry that left Julian sprawled on the floor, exoskeleton smoking slightly. She stood over him, extending a hand. You fought not to win, but to shield. There is honor in that. Later that afternoon, still nursing bruises beneath his formal attire, Julian faced Myra's challenge in the research laboratory. Your thesis on cross-dimensional entropy was intriguing, Myra said, calling up holographic projections of complex equations, but flawed in its fundamental assumptions. For 3 hours, she systematically dismantled his life's work, identifying errors in logic and calculation that Julian had never considered. Instead of defending himself, Julian listened, occasionally asking questions that revealed his genuine desire to understand. By the session's end, Myra's expression had softened marginally. You value truth over pride, she observed. Alara needs a partner who will challenge her brilliance, not merely worship it. Julian smiled wearily. I've never merely worshipped Alara's mind. I've always believed the greatest respect I can offer her intellect is to engage with it honestly. Myra nodded, a gesture that felt like tentative approval. The day's trials weren't over. Cassida awaited him in a garden chamber designed to mimic Astorian flora, with plants that responded to sound and emotion. Diplomacy, she explained, is the art of navigating opposing truths without destroying either. She pointed to a delicate crystalline flower. Approach it with aggression and it shatters, with fear it closes, with balanced harmony. She demonstrated, and the bloom expanded in rainbow hues. For the next 2 hours, Cassida presented Julian with increasingly complex diplomatic scenarios, hypothetical conflicts between human and Astorian interests where no clear solution presented itself. You're testing whether I'll favor Earth over Astoria, Julian eventually realized. Cassida's bioluminescent freckles, so like Alara's, pulsed with apparent pleasure. I'm testing whether you understand that love doesn't erase loyalty, but rather creates new ones alongside the old. When Julian finally returned to their quarters, Alara was waiting, her expression a mixture of concern and pride. 3 trials in one day, she said, helping him remove his jacket. My sisters are not being subtle. Neither are their tests. Julian winced as her fingers found a particularly tender bruise left by Vila's combat training. Alara guided him to their bed, where she had prepared a bath of mineral-infused water that glowed faintly blue. This will help with the pain. As he sank into the soothing liquid, Julian marveled again at how alien and familiar Alara could be simultaneously, a contradiction that never ceased to captivate him. She slipped into the water beside him, her skin's bioluminescence creating patterns across the surface. You don't have to endure this, she whispered, pressing gentle kisses to his bruised shoulder. We could leave, find some distant planet where neither Earth nor Astoria could dictate our choices. Julian turned to her, cradling her face between his hands. And deny you your birthright, your home, your family? No, Alara, I will face every test they devise. Their kisses deepened in the glowing water, bodies entwining with increasing urgency. There was a desperate edge to their lovemaking that night, as though they both sensed the mounting pressures threatening to separate them. Afterward, as Alara lay curled against him, her dual heartbeats a counterpoint to his single rhythm, Julian stared at the ceiling where she had installed a perfect replica of Astoria's night sky. Tomorrow, Alara murmured sleepily, you face Thessala. Julian tightened his arm around her. The first 3 sisters had tested his body, mind, and diplomatic acumen. What would the eldest and most powerful sister demand of him? What is Thessala's domain? He asked. Vila tests strength, Myra intelligence, Cassida diplomacy. What is Thessala's specialty? Alara's luminescent patterns dimmed slightly, a sign of concern Julian had learned to recognize. Thessala oversees tradition and governance, but her true power lies in judgment. She raised herself on one elbow to look into his eyes. Thessala sees truth, Julian, not through technology or training, but through an inherited gift. She will know your heart's deepest motives. Julian felt a chill that had nothing to do with Alara's naturally cool skin. Then I have nothing to fear, he said with more confidence than he felt. My love for you is true. It isn't your love she doubts, Alara replied softly. It's whether that love is enough to overcome the differences between our worlds. As they drifted to sleep in each other's arms, Julian wondered the same thing himself. Julian stood alone on the observation deck of the ISC headquarters, watching military aircraft circling the Astorian vessel with increasing frequency. The past 24 hours had transformed what should have been wedding preparations into a diplomatic crisis. Dr. Hayes, the voice behind him belonged to General Keegan, Earth's highest-ranking military officer. We need to discuss the security situation. Julian turned wearily. What I need, General, is for your jets to back off before the Astorian Royal Guard interprets their presence as aggression. With all due respect, Doctor, when 4 alien royals arrive with technology centuries beyond ours, accompanied by warriors capable of... Of what? Julian interrupted. In the week they've been here, has any Astorian shown the slightest hostility? The general's jaw tightened. Our satellite systems detected energy readings from their vessel last night, readings consistent with weapons charging. Julian's blood ran cold. That couldn't be right. There must be some mistake. The Astorians are not human, Keegan finished. Despite your personal involvement, we cannot ignore potential threats to global security. Before Julian could respond, an aide rushed in. Sir, the Secretary General is requesting your presence. The Astorian First Princess has demanded an audience. The situation in the diplomatic chamber was tense when Julian arrived. Thessala stood tall and imposing, her platinum hair seeming to float with static electricity, the living stars in her crown pulsing with barely contained energy. Insulting, she was saying, her melodic voice edged with steel, to suggest that a royal vessel would activate weapons systems without provocation. Our readings indicated, began the Secretary General. Your primitive scanning technology mistakes our quantum communication array for weapons, Thessala cut in. She turned as Julian entered, her silver eyes piercing. Dr. Hayes, perhaps you can explain to your leaders why my sister's wedding preparations are being conducted under military threat. All eyes turned to Julian. In that moment, he realized the precarious position he occupied, not just as Alara's fiancé, but as the bridge between 2 civilizations balanced on the edge of misunderstanding. The energy signature detected last night, he said carefully, was likely the royal communicator contacting Astoria regarding wedding arrangements. Our technology doesn't distinguish between different types of quantum energy patterns. Thessala's expression remained impassive, but Julian sensed approval in her slight nod. The meeting dragged on for hours, with Julian translating not just language but cultural contexts between the two sides. By the time agreements were reached, Earth would reduce military presence. The Astorians would provide advance notice of any communications with their homeworld. Julian was exhausted. He found Alara in their quarters, surrounded by both human and Astorian wedding preparations. Fabric samples in impossible colors lay beside traditional earth flowers. Star crystals that would form her bridal crown were being calibrated to harmonize with the diamond in her engagement ring. The military situation is diffused, he said, collapsing onto a chair. For now. Alara's expression was troubled as she dismissed her attendants with a gesture. When they were alone, she came to him, taking his hands in hers. Her touch sent the familiar electrical tingle through his body, but there was a new urgency in her grip. Thessala came to me after the council session, she said quietly. She believes we should postpone the wedding. Julian felt his stomach drop, because of the military misunderstanding. Because she believes our worlds aren't ready. Alara's luminescent patterns dimmed with distress. She says the risk of cultural contamination is too great. Cultural contamination, Julian repeated, anger rising. Is that what she calls our love? Julian, Alara soothed, her cool fingers caressing his face. You must understand, Thessala sees beyond the moment. As heir to the throne, she considers implications spanning centuries. He caught her hand, pressing it to his lips. And what do you see, Alara, not as a princess but as yourself? I see you, she whispered, her eyes shimmering with emotion. I see us, but I also see my responsibilities to my people. The weight of her words hung between them. For the first time since their engagement, Julian felt the true enormity of what they were attempting. Not just a union of two people, but a bridging of worlds with vastly different evolutionary paths and cultural values. Later that night, unable to sleep, Julian found himself wandering the gardens where hybrid Earth-Astorian plants were being cultivated. He wasn't entirely surprised to find Thessala there, communing silently with a crystalline growth that seemed to respond to her presence. First princess, he acknowledged with the proper bow Alara had taught him. Dr. Hayes, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. You should be resting. Tomorrow's trials will demand your full faculties. More tests, Julian couldn't keep the edge from his voice. Haven't I proven myself yet? Thessala turned to face him fully, and Julian was struck by how the starlight transformed her severe features into something hauntingly beautiful. You misunderstand. The trials aren't designed to prove your worth to us, but to yourself. Julian frowned. I don't understand. No human has ever joined with an Astorian in formal union, she explained. The physiological differences alone create complications. Our lifespans exceed yours by centuries. Our biochemistry requires elements toxic to Earth life. Even reproduction between our species would require significant genetic intervention. We've discussed all this, Julian said. Alara and I have accepted these challenges. Have you? Thessala's silver eyes seemed to see through him. Or have you simply deferred them to an imagined future where love conquers all impossibilities? The accusation struck uncomfortably close to truth. Julian had focused so intently on winning the sisters' approval that he hadn't fully processed the long-term realities of an interspecies marriage. Thessala continued, her tone gentler. I do not question the authenticity of your feelings for my sister, but love, Dr. Hayes, is not always enough. Sometimes it is merely the beautiful beginning of a journey doomed by factors beyond its control. You want me to walk away, Julian realized, to spare Alara the consequences of loving a human. I want what is best for my sister and for Astoria, Thessala corrected. Just as your leaders want what is best for Earth, the question is whether those desires can align or whether they are fundamentally incompatible. She moved to leave, then paused. Tomorrow you will face my challenge. Unlike my sisters, I will not test your strength or intelligence or diplomatic skill. Her gaze intensified. I will ask you to look into your own heart and answer one question with complete honesty. Is your love for Alara stronger than your fear of the unknown future it creates? Long after Thessala had gone, Julian remained in the garden, watching Earth's moon rise over alien blooms. When Alara finally found him there, she wordlessly took his hand and led him back to their quarters. That night, their lovemaking held a desperate intensity. Julian memorized every curve of her body, every luminescent pattern that brightened with her pleasure. Alara traced his features as though committing them to memory, her cool tears mingling with the sweat on his skin. Neither spoke the fear growing between them, that forces larger than their love might tear them apart. Dawn broke over New Geneva with unusual clarity, as though the atmosphere itself had been purified for the occasion. The wedding venue, a botanical garden redesigned to accommodate both Earth and Astorian biology, gleamed with crystalline decorations that captured and transformed sunlight into prismatic displays. In his preparation chamber, Julian stood before a mirror, adjusting the traditional Astorian bonding attire Alara's family had provided. The material somewhere between silk and living metal responded to his body heat, conforming perfectly to his form while maintaining the formal lines required by tradition. A knock at the door revealed Cassida, the youngest of Alara's sisters. "You seem calm for a man about to face Thessala's judgment," she observed, entering with a small crystalline box. "I passed your test and Myra's and even Vila's," Julian replied. "But I already know I won't pass Thessala's, not because my love for Alara isn't genuine, but because she's right, love isn't always enough." Cassida's expression softened. "Is that what you believe, that Thessala wants you to fail?" "Doesn't she? She made it clear that she thinks this union puts both our worlds at risk." "My eldest sister sees potential futures with clarity that sometimes blinds her to present truths," Cassida said, opening the box to reveal a small, pulsing crystal. "This is a heartstone. On Astoria, it is given to royal consorts before their bonding ceremony." She pressed it into Julian's palm. The crystal warmed instantly, its pulse synchronizing with his heartbeat. It resonates differently with each individual. For some, it barely glows, for others. The crystal in Julian's hand began to shine with increasing intensity, its light shifting through colors he couldn't name, some beyond human visual spectrum. Cassida's eyes widened. "Remarkable. In all our recorded history, only 3 consorts have produced such a response." "What does it mean?" "It means," came Thessala's voice from the doorway, "that your capacity for connection transcends biological limitations." She entered, regal and imposing in formal attire that made her seem more celestial than biological, a rare quality in any species. Julian looked between the sisters, confusion evident. "Yesterday you questioned whether our union could overcome the fundamental differences between our kinds." "I did," Thessala acknowledged, "and today you have your answer." She gestured to the still glowing crystal. "The Heartstone doesn't measure love, Dr. Hayes, it measures resonance, the capacity for true union between disparate beings. It is one thing to love across boundaries, it is quite another to achieve harmony despite them." Before Julian could process this revelation, alarms blared throughout the facility. Security personnel rushed past the open door. "What's happening?" Julian demanded, heart racing. Vila appeared already in battle stance. "Earth's military has mobilized. They claim our ship is powering weapons systems." "But that's impossible," Cassida protested. "All systems except life support are dormant for the ceremony." Julian's mind raced. "Unless," General Keegan mentioned new satellite readings last night. "What if they're misinterpreting the Heartstone calibration for the ceremony? The quantum resonance patterns would appear similar to their scanning technology." "We must speak with your leaders immediately," Thessala declared. "This misunderstanding could trigger conflict." Julian made a decision. "No, I'll go. This is exactly why our union matters. Someone needs to translate not just language but intention between our peoples." Without waiting for their response, Julian rushed from the chamber, still clutching the Heartstone. He navigated the chaos of the facility, eventually reaching the military command center where General Keegan was issuing orders. "General, stop," Julian called out. "You're making a catastrophic mistake." "Dr. Hayes, this is a restricted area during alert status." Julian held up the crystal. "This is what your satellites are detecting. It's part of the wedding ceremony, a quantum resonance device that measures compatibility, not a weapon." Keegan looked skeptical. "Our readings indicate energy patterns consistent with—" "With technology you don't fully understand," Julian interrupted. "Just as the Astorians don't fully understand why you perceive their actions as threatening." He took a deep breath. "This is why Alara and I need to marry, not just for ourselves but as a living bridge between worlds that seek connection but speak different languages of technology and culture." The general studied Julian's face, then the pulsing crystal. "Explain how it works," he finally said. For 20 crucial minutes, Julian provided a simplified explanation of Astorian quantum resonance technology, translating alien concepts into terms Earth scientists could comprehend. Slowly, the tension in the room dissipated as understanding grew. By the time Julian returned to the wedding venue, guests were already being seated. He found Alara waiting in her preparation chamber, breathtaking in her bridal attire. The living fabric flowed around her like captured starlight, and her crown of crystals pulsed in harmony with her dual heartbeats. "I heard what you did," she said, taking his hands. "You prevented conflict without either side losing face." "I did what we'll be doing for the rest of our lives," Julian replied, bridging understanding. Alara's luminescent patterns brightened with emotion. "You've passed Thessala's test, though not in the way she expected. She asked if your love for me was stronger than your fear of our unknown future. You proved it wasn't just about us at all, it was about the future our love creates for both our worlds." The ceremony itself blended traditions from both planets. Vows were exchanged in alternating languages. The heartstone placed between their joined hands pulsed with such brilliance that guests gasped in wonder. When they sealed their union with a kiss, the crystal emitted a final flash of light that briefly connected every being present in a moment of shared consciousness, a traditional Astorian blessing reserved for the most auspicious unions. At the reception, Julian found himself momentarily alone with Thessala. "First princess," he acknowledged with the formal bow of a new family member. "Does this mean I have your approval?" Thessala's usually stern expression softened. "You had my approval the moment you put the security of both our worlds above your personal happiness. That is the true burden of royalty, a burden you accepted without being born to it." "I accepted it because I love her," Julian said simply. "Yes," Thessala agreed, "but many love, few transform that love into a bridge others can cross." She placed a formal hand on his shoulder, the Astorian gesture of familial acceptance. "Welcome to House Luminar, brother." Later, as celebration continued around them, Alara and Julian slipped away to a private garden terrace. Above them, both Earth's moon and the distant star of Astoria were visible in the twilight sky. "Two worlds," Julian murmured, holding his bride close, "both home now." Alara's luminescence created patterns across his formal attire, her personal mark of possession in Astorian culture. "The first of many bridges we'll build," she promised, her cool lips finding his in a kiss that still sent electricity through his body. As they embraced beneath the stars that held their respective homeworlds, Julian marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. Every test, every challenge, every cultural misunderstanding had forged something stronger than either of them could have achieved alone. A union not just of bodies or even hearts, but of civilizations that might otherwise have remained forever apart. The heartstone, now embedded in a pendant around Alara's neck, pulsed in perfect rhythm with both her dual heartbeats and his single one. 3 hearts synchronized across the biology of 2 worlds, creating a harmony that would echo across the stars.